Great. Thanks, everyone. And we're going to make this available on our website afterwards and for all of you as well if there's anything that you need to review. So we've got a bunch of project managers and program coordinator on this call right now. And I just wanted you to know who it is, who's representing. We are the acquisitions team for the Public Art Committee here, the Art in Public Places program for the State Arts Commission. I am Mike Sweeney at the bottom there. I'm the program manager. I wanted to share this as our vision statement, just to help build a little bit of context. We are uniquely positioned to advance and support art and artists across Washington. Our goal is to build and care for a state art collection that's impactful, accessible, and valued. We seek lasting artworks that reflect Washington's diverse communities. You're going to see images throughout this of artists working on our projects, and most of them are fairly recent. And hopefully this will give you a good sense of the variety of the kinds of works that we do. And certainly if there's any burning question that you have, as Claire put out there, we're going to be doing questions and answers at the end. And if there's any burning question about anything specifically that I need to be interrupted, Lauren's going to be doing that and letting me know that there's something that you guys need clarified. So what is happening? We are holding a roster call. And I think you all know that is happening. That's why you're here. We'll be talking about it today. And I think it's important for you all to be thinking about whether this is a good fit for you. Not every artist wants to make public art. And what is the roster? It is a list of artists that are pre-qualified. It's sort of like a small contractors list. So it means that our local committees can select an artist that has gone through some kind of vetting process, and it allows us to commit state funds, public dollars to contracts. It is an efficiency for us in a sense. You can see at the bottom, we have over 100 active projects at any given time. It is open to US and BC based artists, emerging, mid-career, established. We really just want good artists, and we don't have any quota or any particular kind of medium that we're looking for. So commissioned artworks, what we're looking to do with this list, our committees select an artist to create something from scratch, something new. That is a commission. Everything that is created through this process becomes part of our collection. We have a responsibility to manage. We have 5,000 works spread throughout the state. The budgets range from $50,000 to $250,000. And that is most of the projects that we work with. I'd say the sweet spot is somewhere between 60, 65,000 and probably up to the low 200s. We manage the process. We write the contracts, even though they live with our partner agencies, and I'll talk about what I mean by partner agencies in a moment. Everything is site responsive, and I'll talk about what that means as we go through this. And then that last point, local decisions are key. And we'll talk about what that means in terms of the committees that we work with. So what do we commission? Our projects are permanent. So what that means is they need to be a 20 to 30 year lifespan. We are not the agency that does completely temporary works. At the end of the process, there needs to be a durable artwork that becomes part of the collection. Most mediums, those are just some examples. There are many others. I think you won't be surprised that last bullet point, fewer options for outdoor work, and that just has to do with the climate that we're in, 24/7 accessibility, the potential for damage, freeze thaw, all of that. So we really want to make sure that exterior works are built to last through all of that. What don't we commission? We don't commission mascots. The reason for that is this isn't a design project. We really want to respect artists and the vision that they have to create work that feels right for them. We also don't do water features, so fountains, they're just too expensive. The mechanism is always breaking down. They're turned off for drought in the summer or for freeze in the winter. So we stay away from that. We don't do a lot of mechanical and digital. What I mean by digital is electronics. I don't mean digital printing of something onto paper, for instance. So anything that requires upkeep, long-term upkeep and replaceable elements that will age out or break down, it's really difficult for us to care for it. Again, we have a responsibility of caring for the collection, and it's spread throughout the entire state. Currently, we are not doing exterior work for K-12 schools. That is a decision we made several years ago, and we really love the outcome of that. It allows artists, particularly artists that are new to public art or maybe have a studio practice, be less concerned about what I mentioned before, those durable, long-term exterior works, that you can focus on a medium that you're comfortable working in. So everything doesn't have to be gigantic. Large scale isn't necessarily important. I say necessarily, there are certainly some projects where the committee may have, or the school or the college may have that giant, beautiful wall or space. I would say even if they do have a big, giant, beautiful wall or space, we've worked with a lot of artists that have done smaller elements that have collectively taken up a lot of space. The project you're looking at now by Susan Oran is a series of 4 paintings in a school that only had 1 story to it. So they didn't have that big wall. If you are interested in scaling your work up, we've certainly worked with artists, for instance, that are print artists that do fairly small work. But if you're interested in scaling it up, that's something that we can help you with. That's our job as well. So temporary social practice, we don't ignore it entirely. We do support it. If that's something in your wheelhouse, a lot of artists have that as part of their practice. We have what we consider to be extended design periods. So as you're working on a design, you might want to do workshops. This workshop that is in this image now by Horatio Law worked with students over the course of several months to create origami shapes that became the origami cranes that became part of a temporary installation that actually lasted for about a year. And it really informed the final work that he did, which was a series of cranes out of folded metal. At the end, though, there does need to be a durable artwork. That last bullet point about application opt-in, if this is something that you want to do or you're interested in doing, when you apply to the roster, there will be a checkbox whether or not you are interested in doing temporary or social practice works. Uh, that's because some committees want it, and not every artist wants to do it. So if I have a committee that's really keen on it, and that's something they're specifically asking for, we can look through the roster to see who's checked that box and make sure those artists get shown to that committee. Where do we work? We work with the community and technical college system throughout the state, with all the state universities and their campuses. We work with any state agency that has a new building, and we work with the public schools. So K-12 schools throughout Washington. Our projects are tied to new construction. So we don't work with highways, for instance, but a state agency that has a new building, like a ferry terminal, we will work with them. And it can go on the campus, it can go in or around or within the building. Committees that I've mentioned a few times now, their role is really not only to provide context and start coming up with some ideas. So we'll meet with committees. They'll say, really want to do something that's about kids, about nature, about sort of fill in the blank. They are not meant to. They're not designing for the artist, but they're providing some context, and that gets back to that idea of what it means to do something that's site responsive. Um, they will recommend and approve sites. They approve the final design once an artist has been selected, and they'll work with the artist through the design period. But ultimately, that last point there is in bold because that's why we're here to talk about the roster. They do select the artist for their project. So what are you in for? Well, if you're accepted and selected for a project, once you're on the roster, you're selected to do a project, you'll need to register as a Washington business. You'll be entering into contracts with us, and that's a 2-contract process. I want to also just pause for a moment to say I don't know if any of you are Canadian based. If you're based in British Columbia, it's a little extra work to get through the state registration system. So that if that's something that might give you pause, I think you'll see that in the application. But you're certainly welcome to reach out to us and ask what that means. But we've had artists that are successful in doing that. It's just a little extra step or two. You'll be making presentations to committees as you move through the design process. Again, I point these things out. It's not every artist that is comfortable doing that or wanting to do that. You'll be hearing feedback. So again, you'll be meeting with committees. They'll be weighing in. They'll be saying, we love it, or we're not certain what's going on here. Whatever that feedback is, it's important for you to take it, digest it, and come back with another design or a formal design based on their feedback. You'll need to get insurance and pay applicable taxes. And you'll need to follow state contracting requirements. Not in every case, that really depends on the scope of work and how it's installed. And again, that is our job, is to help you navigate that. So are you still here? That was sort of the bureaucracy. I wanted to make sure that you're all aware. All that stuff is real. But, you know, the other part of this, if you are accepted and selected for a project, we pay. We pay on time. Our check's clear. You get lots of support. So you'll be assigned a project manager for our art and public places. We also will hire a professional art conservator to work with you during the design phase to make sure that you're selecting materials that will last. They may give you suggestions if you've got a couple that you're thinking about. You'll be working with a structural engineer to make sure that the integrity of the work is going to last, and also the way that it's installed will stay. And other project representatives. So the architect is often part of that, and they often love to have artists in their spaces, and they'll sometimes design ways to integrate the artwork. You'll get to meet with facility staff and a whole slew of people that can really help move the project along. You'll meet amazing people. Our committees are pretty awesome. And it's really all over the state, rural, suburban, urban, higher ed, elementary schools. It's just really a great mishmash of wonderful, smart people. And it really is a delightful process. And ultimately, you get to create artwork that will activate our campuses and state buildings. Eligibility, I mentioned already, it's open to the US or British Columbia. There's an asterisk next to visual artists just to acknowledge that we have had performance artists, sound artists get on the roster. There are not a lot of options for those artists. If that is your wheelhouse, you're welcome to apply, but just to caution you, it's unlikely that a committee would be selecting your portfolio, but there's no ban on it. Or you're 18 or over. So if you're under 18, I'm sorry, not eligible. It is free to apply. As is the submittable account. If any of you have poked around already on submittable, you'll see it's free to sign up for the account. So you want to make sure to visit our website. You probably did just to sign up for this. Make sure you read the guidelines and let us know if you have any questions about anything that's on it. And then you're going to be preparing your portfolio materials. And I'm not going to go into great detail about that right now. There is a video that Valerie made that is on our website. It's on the section when you go to the apply to the roster page. It's a video that really walks you through it. And I think Val probably will be doing a little bit of a presentation about what the application looks like. But I do want to talk about images for a moment, just because that is really the best way that you can present yourself. And we just have a few short tips. One is to make sure that you shoot your artwork, you photograph it with good lighting. You want to make sure that the 8 images, which you'll be asked to supply, that the first one that you put on there, keep in mind that's your thumbnail. There'll be a prompt, but it's just something that we want to really underscore. That you're looking at on the right is just a screenshot of what the gallery view looks like. So when our committees are reviewing portfolios, this is what they see. And you'll see that there are a variety of images, and I just want to point out, if you look at the center image, for instance, in the top there, that is a vertical image, and automatically it scales it to a square with this format. You'll see the full image when you go into the portfolios, but this is sort of the first time that somebody will be seeing you and what represents you. So in that case, the sculpture got a little bit cut off at the bottom. So that's why we recommend horizontal. The caveat to that is don't make it a panorama, because if it's too long, the algorithm that puts it into this format, even when on the screen, it appears to be blurry. So it just doesn't look great. even though when you do go in again to the portfolio, you'll see the full image. Select your best work. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer, but I think it's important that you're really showcasing the work that you can do. I also want to say it's important to put in work there that you want to make, meaning if you've been a sculptor, but now you want to do painting, you may have made some amazing sculpture, but if you put them in your portfolio and you're not interested in doing that anymore, a committee may fall in love with your sculpture. And then you're going to have to explain to them that you don't do that anymore. So there'll be some buyer's remorse. So try to put images in your portfolio of work that not only you love, but that you would be interested in doing work along those lines. This is a completely unique process. You're making something brand new, but you're representing who you are as an artist. Details are okay for sure. If you don't have 8 different artworks that you want to showcase, or maybe you're a sculptor and you want to show different views of the artwork, it's okay to do details of any particular artwork, no problem. Composites are complicated. You can see a little bit on the top right there if you can make that out. That's a 4-panel image. Some people are looking at these on their smartphone. You may be viewing this Zoom right now on your smartphone, and you'll be able to tell right away that it's hard to read many images that are stitched together. So ideally, you might do 2, I suppose, but ideally it's just 1 image per slide. Our roster application is a user-friendly platform. You can apply with your smartphone. You can upload images with your smartphone. You don't have to have any particular size. It'll automatically resize it. We are asking for statements, an artist statement and a biographical statement. We do not have you upload professional resumes. That gives you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about who you are as an artist. It allows you to put, if you want to put exhibitions and where you got your MFA, you're welcome to do that. But if you have a mentor, if you're a self-taught artist, if there's something about your lived history that you find important, maybe your culture, anything that you feel that you'd want people to know about you, you have an opportunity to put that in that statement. There is also an audio option. So if you're not comfortable with a written word, or maybe English isn't your first language, you're more comfortable speaking, you can do that and upload an audio file. And you also get to choose budget categories, and Val will talk a little bit more about that. What that means is that you might not want a $250,000 project, or you might, but you also might not want to do a $50,000 project if you are, say, a bronze artist. So it gives you a chance to identify the budget ranges that you're comfortable or interested in working in. There's no quota. So really, we're looking for strong artists to be part of our roster. It is a 4-year term. Meaning if you get on now, you're eligible for projects over the next 4 years. If you're unsuccessful getting on, or maybe you're not ready to apply right now, in 2 years, we'll be doing a midterm application, and those artists that get on at that time will serve the final 2 years of the roster. And I think, oh, I got a couple more slides nearing the end. I just wanted to point out this is the review criteria that the panel will be taking a look at and considering. And what you don't see here is large scale and durable materials. That's on purpose. Again, what we're looking for are artists that are making good work. And you don't have to have previous work, have worked in the public art realm before. Our roster review panel, we're really excited about this group. So Davin Diaz is a Tri-Cities based artist, has been part of a collective out there for a long time. He's on our curator roster as well. Lauren Ida is our staff member. She's on the call now. She is a project manager with us. She's also an experienced public artist. Elizabeth Johnson, she was with the City of Seattle's public art program for a number of years. She is now part of Wan Awari, which is an artist collective in Seattle. She is one of the founders of that. Tisa Matheson is a native curator at the MAC, the Museum of Art and Culture in Spokane. She's also a board member of ours. And June Sekiguchi that you see there on the right, June is a curator and public artist. She is based in University Place. So applications will be due on the 17th. They opened last week. The panel will be reviewing through June and July. We'll be giving them a link. They'll be looking at that gallery view that I shared in a moment ago. They'll be sending their final recommendations to our board for an early August approval. And again, those artists that are successful in getting on the roster will serve till the end of August in 2029. And I'm going to turn it over to Val.
Thank you so much, Mike. Let me see if I can nimbly share my screen and we'll get this going. So I'm going to share a little bit about the nitty gritty of our how to access the application and some things to keep in mind as you're applying. Please also excuse the fact I'm a little bit under the weather right now, so my voice is a little cracky. So to get to our guidelines and all of the resources that we have available for your application process, if you go to our main webpage, which is just arts.wa.gov, you'll see right here on the right-hand side a big old button that says apply to the roster. And this button will take you to our how to apply to the public artist roster page. And there's so much information on this page. This is where you're going to be able to read all about how we use the roster and guidelines for the application. So if you just keep scrolling, you'll see a whole bunch of different headings that accordion open with more information. But if you're the type of person that likes to have something printed and in front of them in order to digest that information, we also up at the top have a PDF version of the guidelines available so that you can print that and have it at your desk as you're applying or review at your leisure. In addition to that, we do have the guidelines in Spanish, if that is your primary language. And the other couple of other resources that we have available are a PDF of portfolio tips. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I do recommend you clicking that open. It elaborates on some of the points that Mike had brought up in the presentation, the idea of using your best work, things you might want to keep in mind when you're making decisions about the work that you're going to feature. We ask for exactly 8 images for the portfolio, and I'll get into that in the application itself, how that plays out. There was a great question in the chat that Esther had put in that Lauren responded to, just reiterating that the first image in your portfolio that you will upload is the image that is seen. It's your first impression every single time a committee is looking at your portfolio. So to make that, put your best foot forward with that image is really important. We also offer a Word worksheet. I'm not going to open this one either because I don't want to take us too far deep in down the rabbit hole. But I encourage you to click into all of these resources on our webpage. This Word worksheet allows you to write out, it has every written field in the application as a Word document so that you can spell check, you can make sure your word counts are accurate, get all of your ducks in a row and have everything organized and play with the order in which you want to put some of your portfolio images and image descriptions, and really get things set before you go to apply. So we recommend using that as a resource as well. Mike mentioned how important it is, the bio and the artist statement is. We are happy that we have the audio option as an accessibility option this time around. And so just keep in mind that it's really great for committees to be able to get to know the person a little bit, not just reading a resume. And so do talk about what's important to you in your practice and your life and your work in those statements. And then if you scroll down further here on this page, this is where Mike had noted, I do a more detailed overview of all of the nitty gritty bits of how to apply to the roster in this video that's right here. We have other resources like a lovely artist to artist advice compilation that hopefully gets you inspired as well. And then when you're ready to submit, right up at the top here is the click here to apply on Submittable. And that will take you to our submittable platform. So it should look just like this. And then if you click apply now, it will take you to your eligibility. And you have to, if you accidentally don't click one of those buttons and hit next and it denies you, what you have to do is clear your cookies or your cache in your browser, and then you can you can get back to that screen. But once you're in the application, there are 5 sections. And you can take your time. You don't have to do everything in a single sitting. The platform is designed to autosave every 30 seconds, so your work is being captured. And so really just take your time and approach it however best you work. The first part is where you're going to input information about yourself, and the application is responsive to your questions. So for example, if I selected that I'm part of an artist team, a new question will pop up asking, okay, so are you equally collaborating members, or are you part of a lead artist and collaborators type of team? And then if you select that, it will ask you additional questions. So just keep in mind that there are some fields that are responsive to other fields as you're going through. Once you get to the second section, this is where you would choose whether you want to write out your artist statement and your bio, or choose an audio option. And I would just say briefly, if you choose the audio option, to please label the files that you upload, because that is important for the review process to easily, nimbly understand what it is that the committee member or panel member is listening to. Mike mentioned that project preferences are something that you can define for yourself, what kind of projects you're interested in doing and what the budgets are that you're interested in being considered for. We have a couple of great web exhibitions that I recommend clicking into to see some examples of different types of projects that we do when we talking about social practice or community engaged commissions. You might want to take a look at that and see what some of those projects look like. Excuse me. And just be aware that the budget ranges category here is contingent on making a selection for what location you want to be considered for. So if you click inside, it will then ask you what budget ranges you're comfortable working in. And likewise, if you click both inside and outside, then you'll answer that question for both of those. Excuse me one more second. I'm going to mute myself.
Val, do you want me to continue?
I
Are
think
you doing okay?
I think I've got it now, but
Okay.
and I'm going to keep it pretty brief. I think we're pretty close to the end. I really just quickly also want to show you when you're getting to your portfolio, how you're going to start inputting information about your portfolio. For your demographic information, I'll just note that none of that information is used in the selection process for the roster or by committees when they're reviewing. It's really just for our internal records. But when you get to the portfolio submission, this is really the point where you're going to want to take a big stretch, get yourself ready, because the first thing to keep in mind is that the order in which you want your portfolio to appear is how you need to upload them. So you can't upload files and then say, oh, I want to put this in a different order. If you do that, you're going to have to delete them all out of the application. So do think about how you want your images to appear. And then once you choose a file, let's see if I can do this nimbly. And I'm going to just quickly pick, this is a piece that's in the State Art Collection by Gabrielle Abbott. We ask that you're only going to be able to upload JPEGs or PNGs. The last cycle, we also allowed GIFs and TIFFs, but it was taking so long for those to load for committee members in the gallery view that it was actually not to the artist's benefit, because sometimes people would skip over it because it was taking too long to load. So once you upload an image like I just did, then it will populate these fields, or it will ask you now to fill out these fields. You are required to submit exactly 8 images, but all of these metadata fields, you don't have to fill every single one out. So for example, if you did not work with any collaborators, you don't have to type, no, I just worked on this all by myself. You can just leave that blank. And then once you have all 8 uploaded, that is the last part of the submission of the application. But you do have to agree with Submittable's terms of use. And then if you hit apply now and there's information that is left blank, it will pop you right up there to say, you got to fill this out. So just keep in mind that you can return to a draft application, and all you have to do is sign back into your Submittable account, and there is a folder that says drafts. So I think I'll leave it there. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And it looks like there's a whole bunch of things in the chat. So I will let that be what it is.
I just also want to point out about the demographics is that it is completely optional, so you don't need to fill that in. And there's a little note up there that says it potentially could be subject to public records request. We've never had one in the history of the roster, which is probably 40 years at this point, but there's always a first time. But again, that's not shared with anyone other than staff for tracking purposes. I think we're at question and answer section now. And I'm not quite sure, I can't remember now who on our team is going to be facilitating this.
Well, we haven't gotten any questions in the Q&A box, but there were quite a few in the chat feature. If you put a chat question in and it didn't get answered, just raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Right.
And then just general questions, raise your hand or unmute yourself and we can answer those. Robin, I see your hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
There you go. So, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I'm a glass artist. My husband's a metal sculpturist. We both do work apart, but we also come together for many things together where we combine my glass and my art, my glass and his sculpture. Is it best for us to do a separate or should I do a team application?
That's really up.
up.
Oops.
Oops.
Can you
Can
maybe
you
mute
maybe mute
yourself?
yourself?
Thanks. Okay, that's really up to you. An artist may apply as an individual or as a team, but not both. So, if you both felt like maybe this time I would love to do this project. You have your own portfolio. I would say that there's no, particularly since you're partnered. We often have artists that will do work together. Often couples. That will collaborate on projects, but I think it's important to decide whether or not you want to be known as Robin, the artist, or if you want to enter as a team. But it really is up to you.
Can I speak to a couple of things in the chat? So Tatiana had asked if there's a way to submit a video artist statement. We do not have a video option at this point, but as Mike noted in his response in the chat, when you are uploading an image, the image description fields do accept URLs. So if you have an Instagram reel or want to link to your web page, or if you have a YouTube video about your piece, if you have any of those resources, it takes any URL and then that's available to committee members to click through and watch. So there is that resource, even if you can't upload the video directly. And then I also wanted to speak to Ray's question about haven't gotten a project yet. Am I supposed to reapply? Yes, we do ask all artists to reapply every cycle, but I would encourage you, even if you haven't gotten a project yet, please do reapply. It's a large roster, and you never know when it's going to be you're the right fit for a project. So really just encourage you. We've heard from a lot of artists that there are benefits to being on the roster, even if you don't get a project. Sometimes it takes several cycles to get a project. Sometimes it takes a while to get on the roster too. The panel does change every cycle, so don't be discouraged.
I also wanted to respond to Ray's point about he speaks with an iPad, so he needs to use chat. That is something we can navigate. We did a project with School for the Deaf. I didn't manage that, so I can't speak exactly to how that played out. But absolutely, that was part of that process. There were many artists that were hard of hearing or deaf, and we were able to navigate that. So
yeah, for that project, we worked with ASL translators for every meeting, and we have an accessibility coordinator at ArtSWA too that we can tap for resources as well.
yeah.
Here's a
Claire.
question from the Q&A. How much do the committee members look at images beyond the 8 in the portfolio, such as looking at the artist's website or social media?
It's hard to know because they're doing it remotely. So I have had I've had some committee members, usually they see about 100 to 125 artists at a time. And I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail about how we do that. I think there have been some questions about how big our roster is, for instance, and you see that it's over 600 now, which is the largest we've had. And so the way that we do show it is we divided it so that everyone gets equally shown. I mentioned before about that checkbox for social practice, for instance. If there's a particular tag that is something in your wheelhouse, we will bring in an additional layer of artists that seem to be a better fit for that committee. But yeah, everybody gets to be shown on a regular basis. I already lost the train. What was I responding to? I went off
About
on a
committees.
tangent.
Yeah,
Oh,
about
committees, yes. So
looking
so
beyond the
they're reviewing,
portfolio.
yeah, they're reviewing about 125 portfolios. And I have gotten score sheets. We do send them score sheets, so they need to review everybody that is on that list. I've gotten score sheets back in an hour and a half from some after the meeting ends, which is shocking to me. We usually give them about 3 weeks. Human nature, some people can make the decision like that. The person that filled out that actually seemed to be paying attention. There was consistency in who he was checking yes to. Other people will need every minute of it because they want to do deep research. They'll read every word that you write. They'll enlarge all the images to look at the details, and they probably will do some of that digging and go onto the website. We don't have any control over that, so we ask that they be consistent in the way they review portfolios from the beginning to the end, and how they choose to do that, again, we don't have any control over. So when it does come down to the short list, so we will share, as I said, about 125 portfolios. It'll be distilled down to about 15 to 20 that we then have a real focused conversation about. And that's usually, that's in real time. So that's either in person or through a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting. And there isn't external information. It is completely focused on the portfolios and a conversation about strengths and weaknesses that each committee member feels about those artists. And at the end of that meeting, they do select an artist. So if those of you that have been through a public art process before, sometimes there's an interview panel for 3 to 5 artists. That is rare for us. Almost always the committee comes to a decision, and you would get a phone call from a project manager saying, congratulations, you've been selected for a project.
There's a couple more questions in the chat that I think are worth discussing. Florence asked, on average, what proportion of rostered artists are chosen for a project during a given cycle. So keep in mind that we do between 20 to 40 projects a year. So in a cycle, there may be 100 to 150 projects. We do also, if an artist is selected for a project, they cannot get another project until 2 years after they sign their commission contract. So that means, and we do that to try to make sure that, it's not just a couple of artists that are getting projects all the time. So, it really depends on how many people are accepted to the roster this cycle. But, based on our last roster, that would be, about 25% of artists. I don't check my math. And then there was a question about the use of AI, and Lauren did actually put our AI usage policy into the chat. So if you want to, refer you to that to read that.
Sorry, I'm just going to add one more part to that question. As I understand, we also ask that artists disclose if they used AI for their images. Is that correct still?
I believe so. But I have to go and take a look at the application again. Any other questions?
I have one in the Q&A.
Mhm.
This is a good question. So if an artist has largely been using one medium, and would like to expand into a new medium, just how do you recommend they approach that?
Mhm.
And if you could speak to that at all.
Is a great question, and there are a couple of ways to do that. And one is you'll see that you're welcome to put in concepts and ideas. So if you either have ever applied for a project before and put together a proposal that wasn't selected, or maybe it was selected, hasn't been built yet, those are sort of more conceptual, but you're welcome to add those in and obviously explain what they're about. I've definitely had artists that have done some sort of speculative drawings. It's a little it's a little dicey, I think, to do that if it's just completely something that you are thinking about doing, but it's worth it if that's the way that you want to communicate the potential to translate your medium into something else. Or you also could just talk about it. We have artists in the past that have talked about the fact that they use um, materials that are not permanent, but that they've always been interested in translating them into, say, cut metal if they do paper work. And I know Lauren's work she does a lot of cut paper for it, but she's also been able to translate that into some durable materials. And I don't know, maybe if you want to just quickly touch upon what that experience has been like, Lauren.
Yeah, I would say that even before I had actually done that, I would propose that as an idea to public art calls. So I think it's a good idea. Obviously, you don't want all of your portfolio images to be renderings or sketches of work that's not created yet, but I agree, it's okay to put in some ideas that you have for expanding your materials used into more durable substrates.
I think you could also speak to that in your artist statement for your application as
Yep.
well.
And
Yep.
just to chime in with one last thing too, one of the things that I always talk about with committees is reemphasizing that the artist isn't going to regurgitate past work, that they are going to be making something unique and new for, that is site responsive. And so just pointing them to that if it's in a statement or, that's part of our job as project managers is to help committee members hold that reality too.
I'm going to answer a couple questions that I've seen just pop up recently because I'm trying to sort of type at the same time. I'll just answer them. There was a question about budgets being inclusive of all travel, or if you live a long ways away, how does that work? Um, we have two contracts. One is for design, and that is meant to be inclusive of travel and structural engineering. That said, it's important for us that artists get paid. So if you do live far away, we've certainly have artists on the East Coast, for instance, that get selected for projects that need to fly in. Sometimes we can make up for that by having lots of Zoom meetings, for instance. Probably all of us, here we are used to these days since COVID dialing into online meetings. That's certainly an option. But in cases where you feel that your budget is getting strained just during the design process, we can add more money to that. So we have one amount that covers both the fabrication, installation, and the design. It means shifting a little bit of money, but if it means you being able to pay your Visa bill, we're going to do it. So that's really important to us. The other question was about an artist who's a textile artist who works with fabric. Would that be considered durable? Generally, yes. It depends on the dyes. We want to look at the location, meaning is it in an elementary school and out of reach with greasy fingers? Is it getting beaten on by the sun? Is there another location that would be appropriate? But in general, it's not that different than a painting. So those same considerations exist for paintings on canvas.
Great question from Janice that just popped into the chat. Is it possible to be accepted to the roster if you haven't done a public art project yet? Yes, absolutely. Don't think that this is a exclusive club. The only way that we get more public artists is by, having artists that want to expand into public art to put their foot forward. So some things to keep in mind if you're a studio artist or if your practice doesn't encompass public art yet is to talk about, look at the criteria. This is actually something that I want to say in general to everyone. Do take a look at the criteria in our guidelines, the things that the panelists that Mike mentioned that are reviewing portfolios, speak to that in your artist statement, speak to that in your materials, make a case for yourself for why you want to expand into this practice, and then be passionate about it, and choose your best work for your portfolio.
Mhm. Yeah, I can think of at least 3 artists in the last cycle that were studio based, and including one that did fairly small prints only, who ended up getting commissioned projects with us and did fabulous work. And it's probably way more than that. Those are just 3 that come to mind. Lauren has put into the chat our material and fabrications handbook. That is a guide that we share with artists when they get selected for projects, but it's certainly open to anybody who wants to take a look at it. And it just gives some indication. It doesn't cover every medium there is, but some of the sort of broad mediums that we tend to work with quite a bit. And it talks about some nitty-gritty things about dissimilar metals pressed up against each other, but it also just talks in general about things to look out for if you're choosing materials, and whether or not you decide to apply or whether or not you get on the roster. It's a good resource, and we share it with our partner agencies in other states all the time. Average duration for projects was a question that came in. Average, I'd say 2 to 3 years. That's pretty typical for our projects. Some have been done in as soon as 10 or 11 months from artist selection to installation. Others have taken 4 to 5 years. So again, circumstances are different for every single project. Sometimes the artist gets sick. Sometimes COVID comes in the way. Sometimes a building doesn't get funded. Lots of things can get in the way of a project's timeline. But if you are ready to go and the committee and building or campus is ready to receive, it can be pretty smooth.
I'll make one last plug for the fact that our website has a ton of resources, not just for the roster itself, but some of these more general questions about our process or materials that are durable, things like that. If you go to our public artist roster, or sorry, the public art page at arts.wa.gov, you'll find, because we're a state agency, we put everything right up in front of you. So there are resources for artists there, and I would really encourage everyone to check them out. Thank you, Rebecca, for putting the link in the chat.
Mm-hmm. There's also the artist handbook that we do share with artists, and that really, really walks you through what it means to be an artist with a project. It does not supplant the work that project managers do, but it's meant to be a good reference guide, and certainly will give you a realistic sense as to what you'd be in store for.
I do realize that we just gave everyone like we're like librarians giving you like, you need to read this one, and now you need to read this one, and now you need to read this one. So we just threw a lot of information at you. So start with getting your application in. But if you are curious at all, like, we're here to answer questions too.
Right.
I see
Susan, you have your hand
yeah.
up. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks. I just have a question about how to choose those 8 images. If somebody has done a permanent project, but it was 9 years ago, is it good to and how to choose that first one, which becomes the thumbnail image? Is it better to show studio work, or is it okay to show temporary things like banners and utility boxes, or is it better to, how do you choose?
I think it's great to show anything that, if you have done work in the public realm, I think that really helps the committee understand how you think about space and location. So I would definitely encourage. I mean, we sort of consider even though we don't do box wraps and temporary murals, that kind of thing, I sort of consider it a gateway project into doing something with us, because again, it shows that you're already thinking about doing something in the in the environment. As far as older works, ideally they're more recent, but that's really up to you. If that's a project that you feel really is as a strong one, and maybe the only public art project that sort of a permanent piece that you have available to share, go ahead. I mean, my only caveat, I'll get back to what I said before. If it's something that you'd never want to do anything like it again, maybe don't put it in there. But if it's somebody falls in love with it, again, you're never going to make that piece again, but they may be looking for something that has some kind of connection to it.
I'm going to add to that too, as a public artist myself. I think that the most successful first image is an image that is representative of your body of work the most. So something that's not wildly different from the rest of your work, even if it's more recent or larger or durable or something like that, like something that really speaks to your aesthetic is helpful.
Thank you.
Oh, I see a question about budgets and not having done public art before. That's fine. We actually don't ask you to even try to hazard a guess as to what it would cost if it were a public art project. You're welcome to either not fill that in or put not applicable. That is our job as project managers to talk about it. You'll see there's also a tag that you can say whether it's studio work, for instance. So if it's a painting on the wall that is 24 inches squared, that's perfectly fine. And that is, again, that's our job to talk about falling in love with an artist, not the work, and knowing that that artist is capable and qualified to do wonderful things. And we've had committees, and I know Valerie's been talking about this a few times, that sort of are excited about working with an artist that has not had a public art project before. Yep, and okay, I see Lauren answered the question about budget ranges. Great.
There was another question above that, though, from Sabella asking, for multidisciplinary artists, would you recommend we share one discipline only, or open to seeing the range? And I would say open to seeing the range, especially if that is your practice, if you like to carry different, different ideas or different approaches, because you never know what the committee is going to fall in love with your practice. And definitely would say it's fine. I know 8 images isn't a ton of images, but within that, to showcase a little bit of of what you do. I mean, I would say to some extent that having well, no, I'm not even going to say this. I said this before, that, or maybe it wasn't during this webinar, that like some continuity of visual language sometimes I think is helpful to like not feel, if that makes sense. But I'm actually not going to say that. Never mind. I don't know why I opened my mouth about it. Do it. Show everything that you do.
I think I would add to that, like, it's good to show a range, but also if you make something that you know is not going to meet our materials and fabrication handbook, you might think twice about putting it in. That's just my 2 cents.
I wouldn't make it about, hold on, I'm gonna I'm gonna
Yeah.
push back on that, Lauren. I
Go
wouldn't
for it.
say don't think about it from a material standpoint, because you're not going to be recreating that same thing. You're going to be doing something new. But do evaluate, if you feel like, if you're a multidisciplinary artist, if one of your disciplines doesn't feel like it communicates the criteria as well as the other, then that is an instance where I would say maybe don't, if you dabble, if you feel like it's not, you don't have as strong a voice in one of those disciplines, and you feel like it would benefit your portfolio, thinking about, just keep in mind that criteria, and have that be your guide a little bit.
Right. Any other burning questions?
May I ask another question?
Of course.
How do you discern the difference between an emerging artist and an intermediate? Or no, is it intermediate? Yeah.
There are some brief sort of what to think about if you've had one or more project, for instance, in the public realm versus none at all. And that's really, I would also say there's a lot of self-selection and whatever you're comfortable checking. And this is not shared with committees either. But we are just wanting to make sure that we are supporting artists at all stages of their careers. And so however you identify is fine. Great.
Thank you.
We've got 2 minutes left. Happy to answer another question or so, but then we're also available at any time. You can find us on the website. You're more than welcome to reach out at any time, particularly during this process for other questions you might have.
I do have one thing that I just thought of that I didn't say in my walkthrough, which is that we can't see your application until it's submitted. So if you encounter a snafu or an error with submittable, they have a help desk that's very helpful. But we're happy to answer questions about the process and about our criteria or things like that. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty of any technical issues with the submittable platform, use their help desk.
You could also check in with us too. It might be simple as a different browser that you need to try, or clearing out your cache or something like that. So there are lots of common things that people encounter, and you know, Val's right. I mean, the submittable will know better than we about 99% of it, but there are a lot of things that come about that are pretty straightforward. So you could start with us, and then we may tell you to contact the help desk.
There's one more question in the chat there that
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can answer, Mike or Val.
Got to see it first.
So Elizabeth asked, if I don't know the size of a project, how can I know if I need a collaborator in the application? Is there a question about it? So you would indicate collaborators in your portfolio images if you worked with anyone else in the creation of that work. But you'll be applying either as an individual artist or as an artist team if you do work with collaborators. Does that answer your question, Elizabetta?
And also, I want to point out that many artists, particularly artists that have not worked with durable materials before, will work with fabricators, and that's a different thing than a collaborator. It's subcontracting out a significant portion of experienced public artists do that on a regular basis. So don't feel like you're releasing control over your own project or your name as the author of that artwork. And that's something that we can help have you, partner you up or help you identify some potential fabricators if that's something you want to do.
Yeah, ask one tiny question. So
Sure.
I know it's the end of this program, but when you want the audio files labeled to be able to access them easily, what do you want in that file name? Like audio, last name, bio, that sort of thing, or simple? Okay.
Yeah, it's in there is instructions for it in that section. I sort of went fast through the application, but yes, exactly that. So that your name, and then if it's your bio and your name _ artist statement, that's perfect.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your taking the time to join us. Good luck, and let us know if you encounter any problems. But thanks for spending the time.
Thank you all.
everybody.
It was nice to see you on Zoom.